Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. The evening had started off like any other. Emily and I had been invited to Karen and Tom's place for dinner, a regular occurrence that, in hindsight, had become part of our social routine. I had never minded these get-togethers, but I never really looked forward to them either. They were more Emily's thing. She thrived on these connections, her laughter always the loudest in the room, her stories the ones that made people lean in just a little closer. Tonight, however, something felt off from the moment we walked in. Maybe it was the way Emily clung to my arm a little tighter than usual when Karen opened the door. Or the way she seemed unusually quiet as we exchanged the usual pleasantries with the other couples. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and I caught her glancing toward the door more than once, as if she was already planning her escape. The dinner table was set with Karen's usual over-the-top flair, candles, wine, appetizers meticulously arranged on little porcelain plates. It was clear she had put in the effort, and as the evening rolled on, the conversation ebbed and flowed between light-hearted banter and shared memories. I sat back, half listening, half drinking, until Karen brought up that summer. "Do you guys remember that one summer," she started, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. "The summer before you and Emily got really serious? Long distance and all. God, it was wild how you both managed that back and forth for so long." Karen laughed, and I could feel the table turn its attention toward me and Emily. At first, I chuckled, thinking nothing of it. That time in our relationship was years ago, and while long distance had been tough, we had made it work. Or so I thought. Emily's laugh, however, was delayed, forced, even. I glanced at her, catching a glimpse of something I hadn't seen before in her face, nervousness. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass, her knuckles turning white, and she quickly looked away. "Yeah, that was a crazy time," Emily mumbled, eyes glued to the tablecloth. Her words hung in the air like a heavy fog, the mood at the table shifting. Karen, unaware of the change, kept going. "I always thought it was impressive how you two pulled through it. I mean, Emily was traveling all the time, and you, stuck in that tiny apartment, must have been hard. Not everyone could do it, you know." Emily swallowed hard, her face pale. She muttered something unintelligible, forcing another smile, but the tension was palpable. I leaned in closer, my mind suddenly spinning in directions I hadn't expected. "Emily," I whispered, trying to keep my voice low, "everything okay?" She barely met my gaze, nodding too quickly. "Yeah, it's fine. I'm fine. Just tired, that's all." The rest of the table hadn't noticed. They were too wrapped up in the conversation. But I knew. I knew something wasn't right. I'd been married to this woman for nearly 15 years, I could tell when something was eating at her. I didn't press it. Not here. But the evening dragged on, every laugh that erupted around the table feeling more hollow by the minute. Emily barely spoke for the rest of the dinner, offering only short responses when people asked her questions, and excusing herself to the bathroom twice. Each time she left, I felt a knot in my stomach tighten, 1,000 questions swirling in my head. When it was finally time to leave, I could hardly keep the relief off my face. We said our goodbyes, Emily hugging Karen a little too long before practically rushing out the door. I followed, the silence between us thick and tense. In the car, I stared ahead at the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. "You seemed off tonight," I said after a few minutes of driving. My voice sounded calm, but inside, my nerves were frayed. "I'm just tired," she said quietly, her gaze fixed out the window. "Are you sure?" I pressed, glancing over at her. "Because it wasn't just tonight. You got weird when Karen mentioned that summer." "I don't get it, what happened?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she fidgeted with her seatbelt, her fingers running over the fabric in anxious strokes. The longer she stayed silent, the louder the alarm bells rang in my head. "Emily," I repeated, more firmly this time. "What's going on?" I said I'm fine, she snapped, a little too quickly. The sharpness in her voice caught me off guard. Can we not do this right now? Her words stung, but it wasn't just the tone. It was the evasion. The refusal to meet my eyes. The way she seemed to shrink into her seat, retreating into herself. I clenched my jaw, trying to swallow the frustration rising in my chest. I'm just asking because it felt like something happened tonight. You've been distant. Was it something Karen said? Emily sighed heavily, her shoulders slumping as if she were carrying the weight of the world. For a split second, I thought she might tell me, that she might finally let whatever it was spill out. But instead, she shook her head. I told you, I'm fine, she repeated, her voice quieter now, but the tension still there. Can we just go home? I didn't push further. Not tonight. But as I drove us home, the silence between us felt suffocating. Something had changed, and I could feel it creeping in like a cold draft from a window left open too long. I knew the questions weren't going away, not until I got answers. But what I didn't know was just how deep the lies had run, or how much they would break me. I barely slept that night. After the tense dinner, the silence in the house felt heavier than ever. Emily went straight to bed, muttering something about being exhausted. I lingered in the living room, staring at the TV without paying attention to whatever show was playing. My mind kept circling back to the way she had reacted, nervous, evasive, and uncomfortable. I knew her too well to brush it off as just fatigue. Something was wrong. I sat there, replaying the dinner conversation in my head, remembering every twitch of her face when Karen brought up that summer. I felt a cold knot settle in my stomach, twisting tighter with each passing hour. By the time the morning sun peeked through the blinds, I had made up my mind. I couldn't let this fester any longer. Emily was already awake when I came into the kitchen. She stood at the counter, making coffee, but her movements were mechanical, her shoulders tense. She didn't look at me when I walked in. We need to talk, I said, my voice firm but steady. I wasn't going to let her brush this off again. Emily froze for a second, her hand gripping the coffee pot. She didn't turn around, didn't say anything. But the way her body stiffened told me everything I needed to know. She knew exactly what I was going to ask. Emily, I continued, stepping closer, my voice lower but more insistent, you weren't yourself last night. Something's been bothering you. Is there something you need to tell me? She sighed, setting down the coffee pot, but still, she didn't turn around. Her silence was suffocating, and I felt my patience slipping. Emily, just tell me what's going on, I demanded. What happened during that summer? Why did you react like that when Karen brought it up? Finally, she turned to face me, her eyes red-rimmed, like she hadn't slept either. She crossed her arms over her chest, hugging herself as if to hold something in. Do you really want to know? She asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. That question sent a chill through me. It wasn't just a question, it was a warning. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. Yes, I said, my voice cracking just a little. I need to know. She stood there for a moment, staring at the floor, her brow furrowed. I could see the battle playing out in her head, the weight of whatever secret she had been carrying for so long. Then, with a shaky breath, she spoke. That summer, when we were long distance, she began, her voice trembling, I wasn't faithful. The words hit me like a sledgehammer, knocking the air out of my lungs. I stared at her, not sure if I had heard her right. What? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Emily looked away, her arms tightening around herself, as if bracing for the blow she had just delivered. I cheated on you, multiple times. I felt my heart plummet into my stomach. My knees went weak, and I leaned against the counter for support, my mind reeling. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. The silence stretched between us like a yawning abyss, and I was on the edge, teetering, about to fall in. How many times? I finally managed to choke out, my voice hoarse. She winced at the question, her face crumpling. I don't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. A few. I mean, more than once. There were a couple of guys. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I was lonely, and I cut her off, the anger rising in my chest like a tidal wave. Lonely? I repeated, my voice louder now. We were both lonely, Emily. I was busting my ass to make this work, to keep us together while you were off screwing other guys. I know, she cried, her eyes filling with tears. I was wrong, and I've hated myself for it every day since. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to hurt you. Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. You've succeeded in both. Emily collapsed into a chair at the kitchen table, burying her face in her hands. I could hear her sobbing quietly, but it did nothing to calm the storm brewing inside me. How long? I demanded, pacing the kitchen now, my heart pounding. How long have you been lying to me? She looked up at me through tear-streaked eyes, her voice shaking. It was only during that summer. After that, I stopped. I swear, I never cheated on you again after we got married. But you lied to me, I spat, slamming my hand down on the counter. For years, Emily. For years, you let me believe everything was fine. We built a life together, and all that time you were hiding this. I didn't want to hurt you, she repeated, her voice breaking. I love you, I never wanted to lose you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just a hollow, bitter sound that echoed in the quiet kitchen. Well, you've lost me now, I said, my voice cold and final. I can't do this. I can't live with this lie hanging over us. Emily stood up suddenly, crossing the room toward me, desperation in her eyes. Please, she begged, grabbing my arm. Please don't leave me. We've been together for so long. We have a family. Think about the kids, about everything we've built. Don't throw it all away over a mistake I made years ago. I pulled my arm away from her grip, shaking my head. This wasn't just a mistake, Emily. This was years of deception. You let me believe we had something real, something built on trust, and it was all a lie. I love you, she whispered again, her voice trembling. Please. I'm so sorry. Don't go. I stared at her, my heart breaking into pieces, but I couldn't stay. I couldn't pretend everything was fine after knowing what she had done. I need time, I muttered, turning away from her. I need to think. I walked out of the kitchen, her sobs following me as I left the room. The days that followed were a blur of emotions and sleepless nights. I moved through the house like a ghost, going through the motions but feeling disconnected from everything around me. The laughter of our children, the soft hum of the washing machine, even the sunlight streaming through the windows felt muted. I spent hours contemplating our life, each moment replaying in my mind like a broken record. Emily begged for forgiveness, often cornering me in the kitchen or the living room, her eyes filled with tears. She would recount memories, trying to remind me of the love we once shared, but her words felt empty. Every time she tried to reach out, I found myself retreating further into my shell. One afternoon, as I sat on the couch, the weight of the situation felt especially heavy. Our children, Luke and Max, were at school, and the silence of the house was deafening. I picked up my phone and stared at it, contemplating calling my best friend, Mark. He had been my sounding board through many challenges, but I hesitated, not wanting to burden him with my chaos. Just then, Emily walked into the room, her face pale, eyes red-rimmed. Can we talk? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. I sighed, the exhaustion weighing down my resolve. What more is there to say, Emily? You've already told me everything. I know, but I want to explain. I want you to understand why it happened. I never meant to hurt you, she pleaded, stepping closer. Understand? How can I understand cheating on your husband? I shot back, my anger rising. You had a choice, Emily. You chose to betray me, not once, but multiple times. She flinched at my words, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You don't understand how lonely I felt. It was so hard being apart. I felt like I was losing you. I shook my head, trying to remain calm, though my heart raced. I was lonely too. We were both making sacrifices. But I didn't go and sleep with someone else because I was feeling neglected. I know, she whispered, lowering her gaze. And I can't take back what I did. But I love you, and I want to fix this. Love isn't enough when trust is broken, I said, my voice firm. You think saying you love me will erase the years of lies? It doesn't work that way. Please, let's go to therapy together, she suggested, her voice growing desperate. We can work through this. I'll do anything. I paused, contemplating her words. Therapy could help, but could I really trust her enough to open up to a stranger about my feelings? Would it even matter if I did? Emily, I don't know if I can do that, I replied, my voice heavy with doubt. I need space to think, to figure out what I really want. She stepped back, her expression shifting to one of anger. So you're just going to throw everything away? After all the years we've been together, you're just going to walk away? Maybe I have to, I said, standing up to face her. You think this is easy for me? I'm the one who's been betrayed. I'm the one who has to make a decision about whether I can live with this. I can change, she cried, her voice breaking. I can be the wife you always wanted. Just give me another chance, another chance. After everything. I ran my fingers through my hair in frustration. It's not just about wanting to change. You've shattered my trust, Emily. I can't ignore that. The door creaked open, and our boys rushed in, their faces alight with the energy of youth. Luke, our 10-year-old, was carrying a backpack slung over one shoulder, while 7-year-old Max bounded in, eager to share the details of his day. Hey, Dad! Guess what we did today? Luke shouted, his excitement filling the room. I quickly masked my emotions, putting on a smile as I knelt to hug them both. Hey, buddy! What's up? As I played along with their stories, I could feel Emily's presence behind me, the tension in the air thickening again. I glanced back at her, seeing the sorrow etched across her face, but I also felt something shift within myself, a resolve hardening in my chest. I couldn't let her guilt distract me from the truth. Later that evening, as the boys settled down for bed, I retreated to my study. I needed a moment alone, away from Emily and the chaos swirling in my head. I closed the door behind me and sank into my chair, taking deep breaths to steady my racing heart. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was Mark, checking in. I hesitated before typing a response, but I needed someone to talk to. Me, can we meet up? I need to talk. Mark, of course. Is everything okay? Me, no, not really. I found out some things about Emily. Mark, I'll be there in 30 minutes. I put my phone down, feeling a flicker of hope. I needed support, someone who understood the depth of my pain. When Mark arrived, he wasted no time. Hey, man, he said, his tone serious but concerned. What's going on? I ran a hand over my face, gathering my thoughts. Emily cheated on me during our long-distance relationship. More than once. Mark's expression shifted, a mix of shock and sympathy. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. That's brutal. It is, I replied, feeling the familiar sting of anger and betrayal. She wants me to forgive her and go to therapy, but I don't know if I can. Have you thought about what you want? Mark asked, leaning back in his chair, his eyes focused on me. I want to move forward, but I can't do it with the weight of her betrayal hanging over me, I admitted. It's hard to picture a future together when the past feels so tainted. Mark nodded, his expression thoughtful. That makes sense. You deserve to feel secure and happy. If you're not ready to forgive her, then you need to stand firm in your decision. Everyone is pressuring me to stay together, I said, frustration bubbling to the surface. Family, friends. They think it's a mistake to throw away our marriage. But this isn't just about them, Mark replied, his voice steady. It's about you and what you need. You have to put your happiness first, even if it's hard. You can't ignore how this makes you feel. I know, I said, sighing deeply. But it feels impossible. I keep thinking about our kids, how this will affect them. Kids are resilient, he reassured me. As long as you're both committed to co-parenting, they'll be okay. But you need to prioritize your mental health first. I nodded, feeling a sense of clarity amidst the chaos. Mark was right. I had to take care of myself first if I was ever going to be a good father or partner again. Thanks, Mark. I needed this, I said, finally feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Anytime, man. Just remember, whatever you decide, I've got your back, he replied with a reassuring smile. As we talked late into the night, I felt the fog of confusion begin to clear. I was still hurt, still lost, but I knew one thing for sure, I had to stand firm. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to face it, no matter the cost. The divorce was finalized a month ago, but the remnants of our life together still lingered in the corners of the house. Boxes of memories cluttered the garage, remnants of a shared life now relegated to past tense. I felt like I was walking through a fog, each day blurring into the next. Yet, amidst the chaos, I was beginning to feel a spark of determination to rebuild not just my life, but myself. The first step was to focus on my routine. I had neglected my health in the aftermath of the betrayal, opting for convenience over nourishment. With my boys with their mother every other weekend, I resolved to make those days count. I started with simple changes, cooking healthy meals and getting back into running, something I had loved but abandoned during the turmoil. One Saturday morning, I laced up my running shoes and hit the pavement, the crisp air invigorating my senses. With every step, I felt a release, as if I were shedding the weight of the past with each stride. After a few weeks, I could see the changes in my body and spirit. I was beginning to reclaim the man I once was, even if it was just a little at a time. On a particularly sunny morning, I decided to take my boys to the park. They bounded ahead, their laughter echoing against the backdrop of children playing. Watching them, I realized how important it was to create new memories, free from the shadows of my past. "Dad, can we play soccer?" Luke shouted, kicking a ball toward me. "Sure, let's do it," I replied, running to meet him. As we played, I couldn't help but feel a wave of gratitude for these moments. After several rounds of shooting goals, we collapsed on the grass, our laughter mingling with the chirping of birds overhead. "Dad, are you and Mom going to get back together?" Max asked innocently, his face flushed from exertion. I paused, my heart tightening. "No, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups decide that being apart is best for everyone," I explained gently, searching for the right words. "But I miss you both being together," he replied, pouting slightly. "I know, buddy. And I miss it too sometimes. But what's important is that we all love each other, no matter what," I reassured him, giving him a hug. "Okay, but I wish it could be the way it was," he said softly. "I understand. Change can be hard. But I promise we'll make new memories together," I promised, ruffling his hair. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to focus on my mental and physical health. I also reached out to a therapist who specialized in helping individuals navigate through divorce and personal growth. During our sessions, I explored my feelings of anger, sadness, and betrayal. One afternoon, as I sat in the therapist's office, I voiced my frustrations. "I just feel so lost. I thought my life was heading in one direction, and now everything is upside down." "You're navigating a major life transition, and it's okay to feel lost," she responded, her tone soothing. "What you're feeling is normal. The important thing is to give yourself time to grieve what's been lost while also exploring what you want moving forward." "I want to feel whole again," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I want to be the best father I can be." "You will be," she assured me. "This is an opportunity for growth. Use this time to rediscover your interests, reconnect with your values, and find out who you want to be." With her encouragement, I decided to take up painting again, something I had loved in my youth but had set aside. I found a local art class that met every Thursday evening. It felt strange at first, but as I dipped my brush into vibrant colors, I began to express emotions I hadn't been able to articulate. "Wow, that's really bright," my classmate Sarah said one night, observing my canvas. "Do you always paint with such bold colors?" I smiled, feeling a rush of pride. "I guess I'm just trying to embrace the chaos in my life. Art is a great outlet for that," she encouraged. "I think it's amazing that you're finding new ways to express yourself." Her words struck a chord within me, reigniting a passion I hadn't tapped into in years. I started attending the classes weekly, and soon, the friendships I formed began to fill the void left by Emily. The other artists in the class became a support system, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and healing. One evening after class, Sarah and I stayed behind to clean up. "You've come a long way since you started," she commented, stacking the brushes. "How are you feeling about everything?" "Better, actually," I admitted. "I'm still figuring things out, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. It's nice to be around people who understand." "I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes just being in a creative space helps," she said, her eyes lighting up. "If you ever want to collaborate or just talk, I'm here." "Thanks, Sarah. That means a lot," I said, grateful for her kindness. As my confidence grew, I also made an effort to bond with my boys on a deeper level. We had movie nights where we shared popcorn and blankets, and I encouraged them to express their feelings about the divorce openly. One evening after a movie, I turned to them, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "You guys know it's okay to talk about how you feel, right? I want to hear what you think about everything." "Sometimes I feel sad," Max admitted, his voice small. "I don't like it when we can't all be together." "I feel that way too sometimes," I said, kneeling down to their level. "But we're a family no matter what. We'll make new traditions together, I promise." Luke chimed in, "Yeah. Can we still have pizza night? And go camping?" "Absolutely," I replied, grinning. "We can do all of that and more. Let's start planning our next adventure." As we huddled together, discussing ideas for camping trips and movie nights, I felt a surge of hope. I was beginning to rebuild not just my life, but a strong foundation for my children as well. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to embrace the journey, one step at a time. And as the seasons changed, so did I. The heavy clouds that had hovered over me for so long began to dissipate, replaced by the brightness of possibility. I was learning to love myself again and discovering the strength that came from vulnerability and authenticity. One morning, after a run, I looked in the mirror and finally recognized the man staring back at me. I had endured the storm and emerged not only intact but transformed. I was ready to face the world, ready to rebuild, and ready to embrace the next chapter of my life.